Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, I'd like to call to order the July 27, 2021 meeting of the City of Clearwater Parks and Recreation Board. I'm Bruce Rector. I'm chair of the board. At this time, I'd like to introduce Board Member Armstrong, who's here. Board Member Hood. Board Member Tuttle. Board Member Raftery.
Good evening.
And Board Member Thomas. This time we'd move to item 2 on the agenda, approval of minutes. This time the chair would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the Parks and Recreation Board meeting of June 22nd, 2021.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the Parks and Recreation Board meeting 22 June 2021. Second.
Seconded by Board Member Hood. Any discussion? Hearing those, all in favor of approving the minutes as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The minutes are approved. This time we move to item 3 on the agenda, citizens to be heard regarding items not on the agenda. At this time, are there any citizens which wish to speak to this item?
Chair, I have an e-comment
Okay.
from Elizabeth Davis. Good afternoon. I would like you to consider asking for EV charging stations at our parks for the 10-year plan. As we evolve and improve our Green Print 2.0, we need to inspire our residents to buy hybrid electric vehicles. Our tourists need to see that we support their lifestyle. Even at the Baycare Philly Stadium, we should be negotiating with them to invest in EV stations on the main public property. We invest in the Phillies. They should invest in our Green Print plan. It is worth asking their commitment to electric charging stations for guests and fans. Thank you for your work to make our city greener every day.
Thank you. Are there any other remarks from citizens on items not on the agenda? Hearing none, proceed to item 4.1 on the agenda, Parks and Recreation Bi-Monthly Project Update Report. Mr. Halios?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Per the last meeting with discussions with Board Member Tuttle, we have included, again, the bi-monthly project update report. We were actually just due to have a new bi-monthly project update this past week, so the one that you're getting is a little bit old. You'll see the date on there from May 25th, 2021. But what this does is this is just a kind of a pending list of different projects that we have going on within the Parks and Recreation Department. And then it'll kind of give you a little bit of a description of the project, start, estimated end dates, and then any type of updates as we go through. Some you'll see are kind of pending with no updates. Other ones we update it as we go along, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that anyone on the board may have regarding the projects as they've been stated.
Are there any questions regarding this agenda item? Board?
Did you say that there was a new update about to be issued, or this is the one? This is an older one?
No, yeah, this is the one from May. We'll have, because of the 4th, there was kind of a delay on the last one we have, so we should be getting our new project update within the next week or so I can send that out to the board once we get it.
Could you just send out the latest?
Sure, of course.
Any other questions or comments? Any comments from citizens on this item? Hearing none, we move to item 4.2, update on Pinellas County Gas Tax increase to fund sidewalk repairs. Mr. Halios?
Yes. This is in relation to questions that Mr. Rafferty had regarding the local option 5-cent gas tax. So went back and got with the county to find out some more information about that. So the city, that tax does cover sidewalk and street improvements in the city. And so usually how it's broken down is of that 5 cents that's collected, the county will keep 60%, and then 40% is divvied up amongst the municipalities based on size. Since Clearwater is the second largest municipality in the county, we get roughly 6.5%. So they're looking at, based off of this funding, I think they're projected to collect from fiscal year 22 through 27, about $54 million. So we would get 6% of that. So I think it'd be roughly around $3 million somewhere is what we're looking about that. And then that is for road paving and sidewalk improvements. That money is allowed to be earmarked and used for that.
What was the time period you said? That,
Yeah, fiscal year 2022 through 27 is when they're looking at that. And this comes, really the reasoning for this to come up, and I have actually the presentation from the county, and I'd be more than happy to send that to the board, is that they're running at a deficit. So they had they're anywhere from, I think right now they're running 8 years behind on their infrastructure improvements within the county. Typically they want to be on a 3-year cycle, but now they're on an 8-year cycle. And the reason why is that there's a delta in funding, and that's where this is coming about, is to try to make up for that delta, to be on the positive side of that, to address those type of engineering shortfalls that are coming through streets and sidewalks and things of that nature.
Yeah, I actually reached out to the Pinellas County Board of Commissioners myself on this particular issue, and they indicated, as you said, that the transportation fund would be in a deficit by the end of 2022 based upon the current funding. And at their budget meeting that they had on the 13th of July, they in fact passed in their proposed budget an increase of the Pinellas County Gas Tax from the current 7 cents a gallon to 12 cents a gallon. And they projected that that would essentially add about $27 to each of the Pinellas County residents for that 5-cent gas tax increase. However, the budget itself is proposed. It's under review on the 3rd of August, and again, that may or may not be the final budget. But the fact of the matter is that the transportation fund is in serious trouble. They need additional funding, and in particular, my interest was, of course, the sidewalk revenues that would flow down to the municipalities. So in fact, it looks like they're attempting to do that, and the final review and votes will take place in the month of August. So hopefully we will see some of that money flow to us for sidewalk repair. It also goes into mowing of lawn, mowing of right-of-ways as well as road repair, but my interest was a sidewalk repair.
You know, historically, how much have we spent, the city, on sidewalk repair annually?
I'd have to find that out for you. Matt, do you have any idea of that? Okay. And this, Matt Anderson. And Matt, if you want to come to the lectern.
Good evening, Board. Approximately $1 million a year is budgeted for streets and sidewalk repair. It includes sidewalks, curbing, and asphalt, including obviously all the FTEs, equipment, shop fees. So that's the typical annual budget.
Okay. Thank you.
One final comment I'd like to make as well is that the current tax of 7 cents a gallon is being proposed to be raised to 12 cents a gallon. That's the maximum that they can do. So if that is passed and the monies that Mr. Halios has indicated we may see trickle down to us, it's going to have to be accomplished by no more than that 12 cents a gallon maximum tax increase.
Any other questions or comments on this agenda item? Any comments from citizens on this agenda item? Hearing none, we'll move to item 4.3 on the agenda. Update on July 15 voluntary cleanup for Forest Run Park. Is that Mr. Raftery?
Yes, that was an item that I added. I believe it was at our last meeting that Mr. Halios had the young lady, Samatha Moulet, I'm not exactly.
Moulet, yep.
Moulet, made a presentation to her about the volunteer activities that take place in the city for the various parks and so forth. And by coincidence, I had been visiting the Forest Run Park. I believe Martin has already visited it as well and made some comments about it. So I reached out to her to see if there's anything that could be done to achieve a cleanup of the Forest Run Park. And by coincidence, there was a apostolic church group that was coming to Clearwater that was looking for a project. And she indicated that if we were able to do it, that those churchgoers could in fact do a cleanup at the Forest Run Park on the 15th of July. She came out to the park, she met with Martin and myself, we took a complete walk around the park to see what could be done. And in fact, she set up the churchgoers to come and do it, and they worked probably a little over an hour and in fact cleaned up all of the litter. And it wasn't terribly bad, but it was enough that it needed work to be done. And they spent over an hour doing that. And I believe there was a picture posted of them that they collected 29 pounds of litter, bottles, and trash in that 1 hour that they worked. Samantha also indicated that on the 16th of October, there was going to be a citywide project to have volunteers come out to clean all of the parks in the city if we can do it. And myself and her were hoping that we might inspire the people in the neighborhood of Forest Run to become part of that volunteer cleanup, and the 16th of October would be a good start to do that. So in fact, it was a very coincidental use of those volunteers. They did a nice job, and it's hopefully going to inspire the neighborhood of Forest Run to adopt that park, to do a cleanup on a regular basis. And I would encourage other board members to consider that same type of activity might take place in areas where they live as well.
Any other comments or questions on the board?
Is there a way we could possibly advertise for these cleanups? How are they being advertised? Or how would it? The one on October 16th?
The one, the 16th of October is going to be huge. It's going to be citywide, and there's going to be a vast amount of publicity about it, notification about it, as well as parks that are not currently covered by citizens cleaning them up, participating in that, and hopefully Forest Run. In fact, I know Forest Run will be part of that, so there should be quite a deal of publicity coming out about it.
Yeah, and that's usually advertised, pushed out very heavily via our social media through Twitter, and then also Facebook, and then on the city's website. And usually we find that we don't want to go too far in advance, because it kind of, people lose interest in it. So usually there's kind of a sweet spot, and I'll have to get with our public communications, but I want to say it's usually anywhere from a month to 2 months out is when they start to advertise those activities and events. And I think that's when they find that sweet spot is, ideally, we'd like to get as many people signed up as soon as possible, but the feeling is if we were to go out and kind of push it right now, then it would kind of lose its momentum and its interest by the time the activity actually came to be.
Thanks.
And there's a volunteer bulletin that comes out that I think most of us
I
might
get
get.
that.
Quite frankly, it gives us a good listing of activities that are taking place, things that are planned for the future as well. So, and that, I've always felt that is very informative and does give you some idea of what's coming down the road as well.
Well, that's a great success story you shared, Board Member Rafter. We appreciate that. And also, and I think what I saw from the newsletter was Sam's had a lot of success in getting different organizations, not just churches, church activities, but she had Lockheed Martin help out on the causeway. She's had businesses, and I think if we can encourage, organizations we know of, not just nonprofits, but businesses that want to do something good for their community to participate. And I think that the biggest success has been Forest Run Park, where you've got a local group close to the park that's kind of adopted the park. I know Crest Lake Park's having a cleanup, I think a week from, I think it's this Sunday, that it's local neighborhood people around the park have adopted that park. I think the more of that we can identify and try to connect neighborhood associations and businesses with the park close to wherever they live or work, I think that's our best way to help the program succeed.
Yeah, Parks and Recreation cannot do this by themselves. They need the residents of those parks and so forth to assist them. They can coordinate it, they can provide the leadership, but they do need the volunteers to come from the neighborhood. And while we were working on doing that, during that cleanup, there were people utilizing the park that asked if they could assist, and we did not need their assistance that day, but we did mention to them this event coming up in October. So there is some interest of the people that use the park to assist in cleaning it up. We just have to reach out to them and ask them. And if we give the good publicity, I think hopefully we'll have a pretty good turnout at Forest Run. So.
Well, excellent. Thank you for sharing that on the agenda. Any citizens' comment on this agenda item? Hearing none, proceed to item 4.4, revise selections for Arbor Day tree giveaway.
I added this item from our last meeting on the 22nd of June. There's a gentleman whose name escapes me at this time, that spoke before us relative to the tree selection that is available to the citizens on Arbor Day. And in particular, he was commenting upon the crepe myrtle. He believed that it was the largest giveaway that we had. Some 800 trees was done at the last one. But he indicated that his studies and analysis showed that the crepe myrtle may not be the best tree to give to citizens to put out. And I think he was going to send out a report, or was going to make a report available to the advisory board. But in any case, I thought, should we at some point decide if, based upon that information, it's worth the board sending out the information as a possible recommendation that would say, perhaps not to eliminate the crepe myrtle, but perhaps to reduce the number of crepe myrtles that are put into the neighborhood for the reasons that this gentleman spoke to us about on the last meeting. So I just thought I'd put it on the agenda for a little bit of discussion, that we might advise the Arbor Tree giveaway people that this may be a concern.
Mr. Helios, do you have, my guidance on what the city's?
Yeah, well,
involvement is with
actually,
that?
in response to this and knowing that we were going to be discussing it, I've asked Matt Anderson, who's our landscape manager who oversees our urban forestry program for the city, to join us today to speak a little bit about the Arbor Day tree giveaway. And also, he's spoken with the gentleman who had some concerns and suggestions. And so Matt had a good dialogue with him, and I would just ask that Matt give us an update and kind of give us a little background on what we choose and why. So Matt Anderson.
Good evening, Board. Yeah, I spoke with Kenneth Brandt, he who was the gentleman that came in and presented at Citizens to be Heard at the last meeting with regards to our species selection. And one of the things he noted was that 39% approximately of our species is crepe myrtles. Of those crepe myrtles, we typically try to give 3 to 4 varieties out. Crepe myrtles are very highly sought by the residents, but they're also a great opportunity. We encourage people not to plant trees in narrow right-of-ways because we go back to our sidewalks, our curb, our asphalt issues. Crepe myrtles are one of the species that if it is put in a narrow right-of-way, it doesn't cause as many infrastructure issues. So that's another one of the reasons why we push those as our accent tree. One of our things is our planning and development department. They require replacement trees for removal permits, and we do give our citizens an option to come get a tree to put back for that. The category is a shade or accent tree replacement, and crepe myrtles fall in that accent tree. They're one of the hardiest, drought tolerant trees that you can plant. They're pest resistant. They're great compartmentalizers of decay because people typically do over prune them, which is what we obviously try to educate through the tree giveaway, but you can't always reach everyone. So if you were going to improperly prune a tree, a crepe myrtle can tolerate the quote abuse. So that's one of the reasons why we heavily give them out. I talked in length with Kenneth about some of the other species that we do have on the list, and we try new species and we take them off and try something different. We had planned on trying some more native fruit trees in the last giveaway. Due to COVID, we were not able to, but we are geared up for our 2022 tree giveaway. We plan on having smaller numbers of, but different varieties of like elderberry and various other native fruit trees to include in that accent tree portion of it. So if you've never come to the tree giveaway, we very high in education. We typically have as many as 10 to 15 arborists, not just from Parks and Rec, but from our engineering department, our planning and development department, that come out and help educate the citizens, because we want people to come get a free tree, but we want them to leave with knowledge, so when they take that tree home, they can plant it, nurture it, and have it be part of our urban tree canopy. So I can get you a full list of the species to Jim. He can send it to you of what we were going to do last year, and we're still working through what we will have for 2022. But there is more than crepe myrtles on it. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
So it sounds like from your discussion with him that the crepe myrtle does have a justification for being one of the trees that should be given out, and it does have some tendencies that make it the most attractive tree for the citizens to get. I know the people that I know that go to it, that's what they tend to get, is the crepe myrtle, and they're planted all over the place when that Arbor Day is over with. So I'm pleasantly glad to hear that they are as good and you know as much about that species as you do, in which case we're doing a good thing with it then.
Yes, sir. I mean, they're not native, but they're naturalized. They're flowering. And like I said, as far as drought tolerant, disease tolerant, you're not going to find a hardier accent tree for Florida. So
Appreciate you reaching out to him as well to have that discussion.
Yes, sir. I provided him a lot of our informational handouts that we give to help him with his school project. And so I sent him almost every piece of educational handout we had, lists, and we talked at length. And he actually did make some suggestions that we're going to include. Silver buttonwood is one we're looking to add. It's something that the growers we typically use don't grow, but we can get an additional grower. It's not uncommon to have species from 2 or 3
Right.
or more nurseries for the giveaway. So,
Excellent.
Very good. Any other questions?
And if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, Matt, can you kind of go into just the number of trees that we typically give away and also the process of, how these trees are specifically grown for this purpose? So it takes a year at least of planning for this. So if you don't mind to explain to the board, that'd be great.
we have anywhere from 2,000 to 2,200 trees. We're going to probably be in upwards of 2,200 total, just because we haven't had a giveaway. So we feel that the interest is going to be very high. We currently have our deposit laid over from the giveaways we weren't able to have with Central Florida Lands and Timber, and they grow a lot of the more native shade trees, fruit trees. They have the elderberries, persimmons, things like that. So because they won through the bid process, we will use them. There's another small nursery down on the other side of the Skyway that we utilize for Simpson Stopper and some of the other Walther's viburnum, which is another native flowering tree that we give away that is popular. So we try to get from a variety of sources. We inspect them before we, at the beginning of the process and then at the end before we take ownership of them, just to make sure that they've met the standards we're looking to achieve. We want healthy, disease, and insect-free trees, because we don't want to give anybody something that we wouldn't want to put in our own parks or city properties. So.
Sure. That's great. Well, thank you.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. Very
Thank you,
informative.
Board.
Yeah, appreciate you reporting tonight. Yeah. Any citizens' comments on this agenda item? Hearing none, we'll move to item 4.5, skateboarding fees at Ross Norton Complex.
Yes, I had added this item again at our last meeting on the 22nd of June. A citizen approached and made comment to us about a skateboarding fee at the Ross Norton Recreation Center of some $2, and he thought that was a bit exorbitant. So I made a note of it because, quite frankly, if a citizen takes the time to appear before us with a comment or a complaint, I do think he deserves to be heard, as well as take a look into it to see if there's justification for what's being done, or perhaps a change that can be made. So I added this item for that purpose. I don't know myself if skateboarding fees are a number of recreation centers, and if the $2 fee is typically standard and so forth. So I just thought I'd put it on the agenda and get some input.
And that's a drop-in fee. It's a $2 fee without a recreation card and a $1 fee with a recreation card. And for whether it be basketball at our recreation centers, or if someone's coming in and let's say we have open table tennis, pickleball, things of that nature, there's traditionally a drop-in fee for recreation. Now, our skate parks are set up, or our skate park is set up a little differently than you would find in neighboring municipalities, where it's just in a park and it's not attended and people can just kind of go there and do that. We're not set up that way now. Eventually, if that's something that we look to do and we put it in a more of an outside area that wasn't monitored, then yeah, of course, there would be no drop-in fees associated with that. But to be consistent with everything else that we do throughout the city at our different recreation centers with our different programs, we do charge a drop-in fee.
Seems to be quite reasonable and justified, quite honestly.
Very good. Any other questions or comments on this agenda item? Any comments from citizens? Hearing none, we'll move to item 4.6, sunshine law requirements.
Yep, this one's mine, and
Okay.
I just wanted to let the board know, I sent an email out. A lot of times when we get new board members on here, I think it's good for us to revisit these items and share it. As part of being a representative body, we are required to do what's called government in the sunshine. And part of that is that no two individuals that are on this body can have a discussion when the body is not in session. So if there's any dialogue that needs to be made between board members, it would need to go through myself, the board liaison. and then I can relay that to the other board members. So I just wanted to let everyone be aware of that and know, and, you know, that's how we learn through these things. Sometimes they're not, it's, what seems very innocuous to a lot of us is not considered that way when it's under the guise of the law, but I just wanted to let everybody know and kind of send out that handout. And so, you know, should there be any questions, myself, Pat is very experienced with the sunshine law, so, you know, we're here to just help you guide that and, you know, keep anybody out of any potential hot water. So that's all I've got.
Any questions or comments from the board? Thank you for doing that. It's a good reminder of all this, the information you provided, and hopefully I think we're all on board that we want to comply with the law fully, and that was very helpful to share that information with us. Any comments from the citizens on this agenda item? Hearing none, we'll move to 5.1, Parks and Recreation to meet residents of Lake Bellevue in August to discuss improvements to the recreation area. I think you had a date at the last meeting and then
We
pushed that back some.
Yeah, so it is in August. So at the next Lake Bellevue community meeting, we're going to be meeting with them and kind of going over the different options for Lake Bellevue, Ed Wright Park, and kind of how we can do those things together. I've been working with our neighborhood coordinator, also our engineering department, to address kind of a myriad of issues that the neighborhood has concerning Lake Bellevue, whether it be water quality, and just kind of the uses of that park and making it more of a focal point for the community. So we will, we were going back and forth with dates, and I kind of had been working with Ed Thebe, who's with the local kind of neighborhood coalition over there, Clearwater area of Lake Bellevue. And so we're going to be attending in August, and then I should have some feedback for the board at our August meeting, because I believe this meeting is either the second or the third week in August when we're having that meeting with Lake Bellevue, and then I'll be able to report back to the board about the meeting and kind of the points of discussion.
Yeah, this is an item that came up from one of our residents relative to an email that they're saying that there could be some minor improvements done to the Lake Bellevue recreation area that should be hopefully considered. In response to that, I believe we indicated that there would be a meeting conducted with the residents of that area in August. And I think, Mr. Chairman, I believe you suggested perhaps at that meeting, a member of the advisory board would attend that meeting. Is that something you still think we should consider, or would it be appropriate that we do that, or I'm just
We have to be
curious?
careful about sunshine laws, but because if two of us show up, then it's it's technically a meeting if we're going to discuss park business. So we got to be careful about that, but I think it would be good to have one of us there if we could.
Yeah, is it something that could be considered? I mean, it was.
Yeah, no, I don't see that there's an issue with that. I think that you know, of course, I'll report back, but I think it would be helpful to have one member of the board there to provide another perspective as well.
Okay.
So, be one of those things, if two of us showed up, one of us could always step out.
You can go take a tour of the facility.
Yeah, we don't have to both stay if two of us showed up, but I think one of us would.
But I thought it was a good suggestion. I just wanted to follow up
Yeah.
on it, see if it's still appropriate.
I will say, too, I noticed that Lake Bellevue Day is August 6th. It's a week from Friday. Set kind of a celebration with the community and to get together. And I did agree to volunteer for that, help out with whatever they need. So, you know, we're all, if you're available that Friday evening, I'm sure Sam would like to have the help to have more volunteers over there. And I'm going to go over there and meet the community and volunteer at that event too, so maybe that's enough.
If
and I'll
more
be-
than one of you is there, it has to be advertised as a meeting.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll address it appropriately,
Okay.
make sure we're not too many of us there at the time. Any other conversation or comments on agenda item 5.1? Any citizens' comments on 5.1? Hearing none, we'll move to item 6, Director's Report.
Yes, taking advantage of Matt being here, I wanted also Matt to come up and kind of address, I know we've had the board's had some questions, in particular Board Member Armstrong regarding kind of Florida Power and Duke Energy and, you know, the way that they they prune their trees, and also some concerns regarding invasive species and, pesticide applications in our parks. So Matt, we've kind of discussed those, and Matt will be able to give you a little bit more background on just what it is we can and can't do when it comes to Duke Energy, and also regarding the vegetation management and things of that nature. So I'll turn it over to Matt again.
Well, I'll start with vegetation management. We do have 4 spray techs in Parks and Rec. 2 are under our ball field maintenance division, the other 2 under our beautification division. And unfortunately, we're not staffed or resourced to be able to tackle the invasive species in many of the parks that are more of a passive type park situation. Our spray techs do a great job, but they have a lot of ground to cover. So unfortunately, we just aren't resourced to tackle that. It's a valid concern, I do agree with you, but we are not resourced. And with regards to Duke Energy, the city has no regulatory powers over Duke Energy. Duke Energy gives us a heads up when they're going to be doing work in the area as a courtesy, but it's simply as a courtesy. They don't have to do that. They are regulated under ANSI A300 pruning standards. That's section 1. So they have to make proper cuts. The one issue that they are working with ANSI A300 with is the 10-foot clearance that they have to keep. Because anytime a limb touches a primary line, the first touch, a lot of times you'll see your clock will be blinking when you wake up. The first touch, it shuts down and tries again. On the 3rd try, it just shuts that circuit down. So that's one of the reasons why that 10-foot clearance is so important, because a simple palm frond can do that and basically shut a whole grid down. So they have a tough job to try to manage pruning to A300 standards, pruning also ISA, which aligns with A300, and with keeping everybody's power on. So I did talk to Teresa Crane, who is one of the project managers for Duke that the city has been dealing with on some other stuff, just to get a little background, more information than what I had, and that's where we are. You can obviously, if you have concerns with a specific tree that was pruned, you can reach out to Duke Energy as a citizen and bring that to their attention. So.
Wouldn't it be more beneficial just to take the tree out if it's been massively pruned, to where they just come back year after year and have to keep pruning it because all the suckers and?
Yeah, and it's a tree by tree situation. So without seeing the tree, I can't comment on removing.
Right.
But there's a couple trains of thought on that. So you've got a tree that gets pruned regularly, and it's not beautiful, but it's been pruned properly. It's had proper cuts made. So if it's a good compartmentalizer of decay, you still have a solid tree. So I personally would rather have a tree that's V-cut for the power lines that has to be continually maintained than to not have a tree at all. Then you've got the other train of thought, well, if you have to keep doing that, maintenance and cost-wise, take the tree out. And that's one of those things Duke Energy would have to make that determination on their own. And they do. I know they do take trees, because they send us lists letting us know where trees are coming from. But that'd be completely up to Duke as far as remove or not to remove.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of them out there that have been
Yes, sir.
really hacked on, and I just hate to see it, because pretty soon they're going to split, and
Depends on the union.
problem.
If they've got a well-attached branch union where they are V-cut, that risk is a lot lower. And they have certified arborists that review all the work that's done by their contractors. So they've got some good arborists on their staff, so we'll say that.
Good.
When we had that when we had that walkabout with Samantha at Forest Run, is when Martin discussed and showed that different species to us that were invasive, if you will, could be removed, and not necessarily the trees as much as potato weed and plants and other things that were out there.
Right.
And I was just curious, because of the nature of it being there, is that something that would specifically have to be requested to be spray treated, or is it done on a somewhat regular basis? And more importantly, is it something that could be done by the volunteer citizens cleanup, not doing the trees necessarily, but removing invasive species that are prevalent there?
Well, I'm not over the spray techs, but I work closely with them.
Okay.
We just are not resourced, because one thing about a lot of these invasives, like you said, air potato, you've got Japanese climbing fern, Brazilian pepper, all these things typically require herbicide application
Right.
to kill, and it's not a one and done. It's a continual application of herbicides. So,
Okay.
that's one of the other things that has to be weighed Not only if we had the people, but the cost of the chemicals.
Right.
So I can't answer that specifically. And as far as what Sam can and can't do, I don't feel comfortable answering that either, if it can be done or not through her volunteer agreement.
And we do utilize volunteers sometimes for some of those invasive species removals when it's, you know, I hate to use the word easy, but when it is
Right.
to get in, you know, potato vine is a little bit easier to get into than like Matt's talking about with Brazilian pepper, because not only do you have to make the cut, then you got to do the chemical application, and that's not something we really want to get into with volunteers, just because, well, actually, they're not allowed to. You have to have a spray license to do it. So, but, you know, that's where we're kind of limited with that. You know, we try to do as best we can. We actually had, and UF stopped doing it, but a couple years ago with the air potato, we did a project with the University of Florida, their pest management school, and we released beetles into and it pretty much decimated a couple of areas. They went in there and it got rid of all the air potato. Now I think the funding dried up, that they were getting funding, I believe, through the USDA. So their funding dried up and they kind of stopped that program. But we do look at those alternatives to see if there's, you know, any type of, for lack of a better word, what's it called, Matt?
The IPM, Integrated Pest Management.
Integrated pest management that we're looking to do with that, where it's going to be a lot less invasive for us to get in there and do those removals.
Okay. When the citywide cleanup is done on the 16th of October, is that something that is done by some of the park volunteers at all, or are they pretty much focused on litter and things?
I think they're just pretty much, for that one, they'd be focused on litter, but I know, I'm going to use an example over at Moxon Lake Park, like we have invasive species removals over there. So I think we try to get a little bit more targeted when we do that. So that way when we have our volunteers come out, they know that that's what they're going to do, because a lot of that work, just knowing from kind of being over one day or a couple years ago, I used to supervise that crew. It's much more labor intensive than just picking up garbage. So we try to let them know ahead of time that that's something they're going to be doing. That's something they even want to sign up for.
My main concern was there's a couple of species in the Forest Run Park that we looked at, that balsam pear and Kogan grass, that's starting to get a foothold. And I do that kind of work myself, and if you don't nip that in the bud, both of those species will absolutely cover that site. And that was my concern. And if there's any way, you know, I think I put this in the email, if I can help out, you know, I don't mind, you know, taking a couple hours and going out there and spraying it. I'll even use my own herbicides, you know. I just hate to see things get out of hand, you know. So it's just it's something that I've been battling with pepper for 30 years. And it's one of those that you never can get ahead of, but.
And our environmental department also has a contractor that they utilize basically from the water line out to the water. So obviously not the Kogan grass, but some of the species do get addressed through that contractor. But yeah, Kogan grass is definitely a tough species, for sure. I'm not familiar with the other one that you mentioned, but.
Balsam pear, it's a vine that's very fragile, and you just look at it and it falls apart and then it just takes off again. It's very difficult to kill. It's one of those species that you just don't want to see. But you're right. You have to do repeated treatments, and unless you go back and check on it and make sure that it's gone. I mean, 2,4-D kills it pretty well, but it comes back, you know, and it's unbelievable how aggressive it can get. And it's kind of like air potato. It just goes over the top and all over the place. So.
And like 2,4-D, I'm not specific with the label, but I'm not even sure, is it labeled for recreation areas? That would be another question. You know, we are limited with what we can use based
Right.
on the label. I know a lot of those ag herbicides will do good work, but they're not labeled for what we do, so we can't utilize them. So.
Okay.
And I get, I just had citizen concern last week over how much we spray and whether or not what we're spraying is environmentally friendly. And I think all of our citizens are concerned with that, you know, the amount we use. Sounds like there are some resource limitations on how much we can spray. But, you know, I hear what you're saying on the alternative pest management things.
You're absolutely right, because that's a delicate balance for us when we're at a park, especially when it's not it has some passive areas to it, but there's children that utilize it and people that utilize it. As we have repeatedly, and, you know, Matt can speak to this, the citizens will come up and, what are you spraying, what are you doing here? And then, you know, we'll kind of hear about it, even though there's You know, we always practice the label. We use the term, the label's the law, and that's how we do it. But, you know, there's still some concerns from the citizens about that. So it's a delicate balance for us. You know, we try to find something that's, you know, going to be pretty light and innocuous, but again, you know, to get stuff knocked down, even Roundup, we get questions about that, and, you know, that one gets, we get hammered on that quite a bit.
I think last year during the advisory board, one of our sessions, we were actually asked to request from Parks and Recreation a list of all the pesticides that they do use, and are they all safe, this, that, on behalf of a citizen that asked us that question. And the list did come out very promptly, and it was all safe as it's being used and so forth. So that is a concern, but it appears to have been quite thoroughly addressed by the Parks and Recreation Department presently, so not a concern to us at this time.
Yeah, and myself and two of the other landscape managers were part of the county's integrated vegetation management group that was basically, I wouldn't say research, but it was a group of industry professionals from multiple municipalities that basically sort of looked at the best way we could go forward with chemical use and taking the concerns for citizens in the environment and also trying to be effective. Due to COVID, the group sort of stopped meeting, unfortunately, before we were able to complete it, but there is talks of getting that going again, so.
Yeah. I think there's public interest in that. It's not, this one person was last week, but from fairly regularly, I hear citizen concerns about what's being sprayed, what's being used at our public parks and assets. So I think if you all could reconvene that, I think that would be,
It was done
helpful
for
to
the
the
county.
community to know that you're working together to try to find, environmentally friendly solutions. So,
Yes, sir. Yeah, it was done through the University IFAS extension.
Yeah, very good.
Pinellas County,
Yeah.
so I'll get back in touch with them.
Any other questions? Well, thank you again for coming tonight. You've been very
Appreciate it.
helpful in helping us understand.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anything else for the director's report?
That's all I have.
Okay. Board members to be heard, item 7. Mr. Thomas,
Nothing this evening.
Board Member Raftery.
I have 2 points I'd like to make. The first one is to encourage the board members that if there are neighborhood parks or parks in their area of residence, to go out and visit those parks, just like myself and Martin did at Forest Run, to get an idea as to how those parks are being utilized, the use from the citizens in the neighborhood, any comments or questions they may have of you, as I talked to some of them when I went out on a few occasions to see if they have any significant issues that we need to be aware of. And in particular, with respect to the litter, I was able to utilize that visit and those walkabouts to entice volunteer programs to not only do it with a special church group, but in fact to look forward to perhaps engaging the neighborhood users to do it on a regular basis. So long story short, if you have parks in your area and you're a member of the board, you may want to go out and become somewhat familiar with them and see what kind of problems that we might have. That was the first point. The second point I want to make, and hopefully I'm not violating the sunshine law, if you will, but I've been to do the repair of sidewalk that many citizens have complained to me about, and I have them in my neighborhood, if you will, and I'm sure that everybody has some sidewalk issues in their neighborhood. So I did do that, and at the same meeting, the proposed budget was presented by the budget director, and I was pleasantly surprised to make the notes that the proposed budget for 2022, 30% of it is going to the Clearwater Police Department, 23% is going to Parks and Recreation, 19% is going to the Clearwater Fire Department. So in effect, the top 3 organizations are taking 72% of the budget, and I'm quite proud to say that Parks and Recreation is number 2 on that list at 23%. In addition to that, the Parks and Recreation budget itself was increased by 23% for fiscal 2022, which includes 2 full-time employees to be added, I believe, to the beach cleanup area. Budget workshops are scheduled for the council members on the 3rd of August, and public comments being requested in the month of September. My point is that hopefully, as a citizen of Clearwater, interested in Parks and Recreation's focus on their budget and what they can do with that budget, if you have an opportunity to make known your concerns for Park and Recreation, you may want to take advantage of that opportunity. I certainly do intend to, and it's in no way critical of the Parks and Recreation performance. It's simply making known to the council members the importance of the work they do and the necessary that it be funded properly.
Good, thank you. Board Member Tuttle? Board Member Hood?
Yes.
Board Member Armstrong?
I just wanted to make a comment. I've been going around to some of the parks myself, and I went to the Lake Chautauqua Park. And I just want to make one comment about it, is that driving into the place, I counted, there's 16, what do they call them, speed bumps. And I was sitting there thinking, and with my truck, I had to slow down to like 0 to get over all of them. And I was just wondering, why are there so many speed bumps in that park? Because it takes you a long time to get from the very bottom, where the first one is, all the way up to the top. And it just didn't seem like there was a need to have that many speed bumps, because a guy on a bicycle just went by me like I was standing still. So, I mean, it's a really nice park, and there's a lot of room, and a lot of people use it for running and bicycling and stuff like that. But it just, I was kind of amazed that you had all those speed bumps. Is that necessary to have so many, or?
And I can check with our traffic engineering on kind of the reasons behind having that in there, and I think a lot of that may have had to been, those were in there long before a lot of those trails were put in, so I would imagine the proximity to pedestrian traffic was a lot tighter than it is now, so it may be time to revisit that and look at it. But we can definitely go with traffic engineering and ask them about that, kind of maybe do another assessment there.
Okay. Thank you, that's all.
Good. Well, the only thing I have really is I wanted to say that from the top of the Memorial Causeway Bridge looking down onto Coachman Park, it's amazing the amount of work that's going along in Coachman Park. It's hard to see from ground level here at the library and around the park with the fencing. But if you get on top of the Memorial Causeway Bridge and look back onto Coachman Park, it's really impressive what is being done. And I would say it's with a lot of the prior park already removed. It's impressive what the opportunity is for Clearwater to take a very large piece of property. You don't really realize how large it is until you look back onto it from the Causeway Bridge and see how much the city has to work with to improve that space for the benefit of all the citizens of Clearwater. So I encourage you to if you can, take a stroll up to the top of the bridge and look back on the park at some point, because it's really an interesting viewpoint to see not only what's being done and the great amount of work, but also the great opportunity for Clearwater as we develop that park for the benefit of all of our citizens. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Board Member Thomas.
I second the motion.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you for participating tonight.